Recording in progress.
Yep. Good morning, everyone. So, last session we learned about positions, how we can use various CSS positions we learned. So, in CSS positions, what is difference between all types of positions? With some examples we discussed. Now, another option, Z index also we learned, right? Now, another option is CSS display attributes, CSS positions and CSS display. So already we learned display in so many examples. So when we learned about examples in display, we used what options we learned? Grid and flex. These are the options. But we don't know complete of flex and grid. They have some more options. We need to know the correct difference between the grid and flex, how to deal with them. Actually, so display have some important attributes. We can set display. So display have options like we can use flex, we can use grid, we can use none. So display, flex, grid, none. These are the three primary options. Now, what is purpose and how to use them? Let's see. All these days, you thought that display have inline and block also. Display is having inline. Display is also having block. These are options for display. What is point here? We have display none. None is it hides element from page. If you want to hide any element from page, then you have to use none. It is going to hide the element from page. For that, none. Now we have inline. Inline is for displaying side by side. Displaying side by side. So, but important is it is defined for items. It is defined for items. We have to display for the items. Items need to be side by side. Inline means. Actually, flex also will come side by side. but displaying side by side. But flex, it is defined for container that have items. That is the difference. Inline is defined for items and flex is defined for container which contains the items. So when to use flex, when to use inline, I will show you the point. Suppose, see, here we are designing some page. Let's add a new file, display.html. And this is page. We have some ordered list item, some HTML, CSS, JavaScript. Now, here, when we are writing, we write list item. These are items. List item can be displayed. We can set display. If I am writing display flex, every item I want side by side. So I am using flex. You see here in the output, this flex for that list item are not going to work. And it is not side by side because flex is not for items. Flex is for container. Flex is for container which contains items. So what is the container that contains items? OL. That means we should not define for LI. We have to define for what? OL. Then they will come side by side. You know, when we keep side by side, margins we have to adjust. Space between them we have to adjust. So flex is used for container. If you want list items side by side, then what you have to do is you have to display as a inline. Inline, they will keep side by side. Right? That means if you have to apply two items, they don't have a container. If they are not having a container and you want side by side, then you have to use display as inline. If you have a container in that items are present, then you can go with flex. That depends how you want to configure. So we have display inline and display flex. Inline and flex. Now, inline is for items and it is for container. Display have none. None means they will not display. Display have a none option. For example, here in many interviews, they ask this question. Actually, the frequently asked question in interviews is, what is difference between, it is asked even in experience level questions also. Experience not only UI for React, Angular, like people also, they ask this question, experienced people. What is difference between display none and visibility hidden? Because visibility hidden is also hiding element. Display none also hiding element. Then what is difference between these two? That is very common question because both are hiding elements. So through visibility hidden, you can hide. Through display none also you can hide. So the difference is actually when you keep display none, display as none, what happens is it hides the element and it removes the allocated space. It hides the element and removes the allocated space. So, but visibility hidden, what it will do is it hides the element, but keeps the space. It hides the element but keeps the space, so that that space is not occupied by anybody. Again, that item will come there. For example, you see now here, I am writing heading. So in that, suppose web technologies. Now this is heading web technologies. Under heading, these items are there. Now see what happens when I keep heading 2 as display none. Display none means the heading is removed and space adjusted. That means these items went to top. Now see the same here. I will remove this. Again, we have heading. And I am using visibility hidden. Visibility hidden, you can see the space is same. That means it is removing, but space still remains same. So this is very common. Actually, we have seen this question asked in latest React interviews. Latest React JS interviews, we have seen for experienced people, MNC are asking this question. That means if you are not good in these CSS, HTML presentations and all, Angular, React like interviews, you can't touch them. So you need to be very strong in this, because many people take it very easy, HTML, CSS and all. But they don't know that primary web designing completely depends on HTML, CSS only. Right? Even you are Angular, React, like advanced developer, without basics of these, you can't be a very senior developer with all expert technologies like advanced, like React and all. So you see a lot of YouTube videos will be available. You can check them. Right? In advanced interviews also, MNC level interviews also, they ask these very basic things, because their main aim is designing. And in designing, the key role is HTML and CSS. Right? See, suppose I will show you some technologies. Like, suppose we have React JS. It is a technology. You see what they say? It is a library for building user interface. That means if you don't have good knowledge on user interface, how you can become React developer? The primary is building interfaces. That is the reason you need to be strong in all this. All technologies are like that, front end all. So several such questions will come. You need to know, right? So this is one example, actually, the concept. Difference between display none and visibility hidden, right? So understood the difference? So what is the difference? Display none means what will happen? Display none means it will remove the element and the space allocated for it. So other elements will adjust into that space. Whereas display none, visibility hidden will remove element and keep the space. So that in that space, again, the same element may come anytime, right? That is next important here. After understanding this, one more is actually when you are using Flex. So another option, what are Flex styles? Generally, Flex have some styles. Flex is having so many other options. You just given Flex, but Flex has so many options. We have options like Flex wrap. So we have like Flex direction. Flex depends on these two styles, very important. Flex have wrap, flex have direction. So wrap itself have no wrap. In direction itself, we have so many. Actually, what is flex wrap, flex direction? See, suppose we are designing some containers. Let's create a div, and this is a container. This is container. And here we have other divs. This will put a class as box. This is like box 1. Like this, I'm adding some boxes. You remembered we already learned cards. We learned designing cards in HTML. This is box 2, box 3, box 4. We have box 5, box 6, box 7. Okay. Box 8. Like this we have. Now, important is when you are displaying, let's keep the style. Wherever box is used, width as some 100 pixel, height as some 50 pixel, and we will keep some border, 2 pixel solid black. Now this is all the boxes we have, and margin as 5 pixel, some gap will. I want flexible. Remember, don't think flex means one line. Flex is not one line. Flex means adjust rows and columns according to flex. So flex is not side by side. Side by side is inline. Inline is side by side. So flex main concept is actually, so here, so what is the purpose, right? What is the purpose? What is the difference? I will say difference between flex and inline. This question is also same. Both look similar, flex and inline. What is difference between flex and inline? Difference is nothing but, already I told you, inline is applied to items. Flex is applied to container. But that is not the concept. Actually, inline can display elements in single row. Can display elements in single row. Whereas flex can display elements in multiple rows and columns. Columns depends on the width of container and number of items. All these matters. That is actually inline and flex. Inline will keep everything in single row only, but flex can change. How? See, I am going into this now. All are boxes only. All boxes here, one below another. All boxes are present in a container. So for that container, I'm accessing container. I'm using display as flex. Then it will come side by side. But when it is coming side by side, width is adjusted, which we don't want. Actually, when I am changing the zoom level, you can see this is the actual width. But when I am increasing the zoom, automatically the width of container is adjusted. Then it is not good. Content also will shrink. So without disturbing the width, we need to adjust these boxes in the container. That we have to do by using, after writing flex, we have an option flex wrap as wrap. Wrapping is automatically come to next line when it reaches the border. That is called as wrap. Already you know, suppose I am using Notepad. In the notepad, you will have an option where settings are there, edit wrapping options, page setup. Actually, you will have word wrap. Where is it? Here we have view. You see, when I remove this word wrap, what will happen? When I remove the word wrap, then I am typing something. When it reaches the border, it will automatically scroll right side. That is the problem if there is no wrapping. If I set word wrap, then what happens? When I am typing any content, when it reaches the border, automatically it comes to next line. That is wrapping. That is good. When you design a flex box, you have to design this. That means I will give flex wrap as wrap. Then what happens? You can see now, when I am increasing the zoom level, the number of boxes, rows will be changing. The number of rows and columns will be changing. Not only that, when you are adjusting the window size, you can see the number of boxes will be changing. That is important because when I am watching on mobile or tab, it should fit accordingly. So flex is not single line. Flex depends on wrapping. If you keep no wrap, then it will be single line. If you keep wrap, then automatically they will be adjusted. That is very important. One more is there. We can have wrap direction. That means you can use flex direction. Flex direction column. Column means it will be one below another. And flex direction can be row. Row is default, one beside another. We can have row or column. We can also have row reverse. Row reverse means the latest item will be in the beginning. You can see now, latest is in the beginning. 7, 8, 7, 6 boxes numbers are changed. Why we want like that? Because already I told you. Generally, why we want like this? Suppose you are building, these days we are building single page applications. Single page applications means user will not move from one page to another. User will stay on only one page. Everything comes onto that page. You have seen your Facebook, YouTube and all. In YouTube, when you are watching, scroll up, the new contents will be adding at the bottom. In Facebook, you scroll down, new contents will be at the top. Am I right? That means the new items need to be at the top. That means any new item added, it should automatically go to top. That reverse order we can manage. For that, this is very important. That is flexbox as what? Reverse. If you want to define the flexbox reverse, this is the option we need to manage. So the flex direction, flex wrap, two options are there. Row reverse, and similarly you can also give as column reverse. That means we can have column, and column means like this. We can have column reverse. Reverse means 8, 7, 6 like this. The latest container will be added into the top. This is very much important in designing single page like applications where we need to keep the order also correctly. Right? This is actually flex. So here the question here is, what is flex wrap? What is flex wrap? What it will do? It sets wrapping for content that can span multiple rows, span into multiple rows and what? columns. That is flex wrap. What is flex direction? What is flex direction? I am giving like questions because these are all asked as questions in interviews. Flex direction is nothing but it sets orientation. Orientation for items. So which can be, what are the options? It can be row, reverse. It can be column and column reverse. That is the options actually. So when we are working with flex, so many new options are there. All these days you have just kept the option as what? Flex. But flex have several new features. We need to use all these in the flex options, right? Next important, another option is display. These are all display flex. We have another option that is grid. Actually, grid advantage here is it splits the content into multiple columns. It splits the content into multiple rows and columns actually. Rows and columns. But what grid you have learnt is different. Actual grid behavior is different. And what you learned about grid is only one simple point actually. You learned that grid is used to arrange into columns. Not like that actually. What is the advantage of grid is it provides attributes that can control the placement of row and column. That can control the placement of row and column. That is the major thing about grid. That means it splits the content into multiple rows and columns. But here the main advantage is it provides attributes in such a way that we can change the placement of row and column. We can change the placement of row and columns, which we haven't seen yet. We haven't seen that. Generally, it is used like that, right? I will show you now why this is very important for designing good interfaces. Grid is very important. See, let's create one design to understand that. I will say grid demo .html. Okay, let's create here. So a layout. I'm just creating a layout. Okay, in the layout, we have header. I will just give, so here as header. Just header. This is header. Okay. Now we have under the header, we are having some section. Under that, we are having some footer. In the section, we are having a nav bar. This is nav. And in the section, we have a main. So this is main. And in the section, we have some SI. That is the option. Now, what we are doing here is for all of them, style, we are adding a style. So for header, section, and nav, so main and aside and footer, for all of them, I will just give border 1 pixel, solid, black. And for all of them, I will give padding as some 5 pixel. Padding is defined. Now you can see here, so this is the page with all these options defined in this way. Right in the footer, I'm just giving here footer. This is what? adds aside. This is what, this is footer. You can keep any content there. Just I am keeping these options now. Now, very important, we have header, we have section, we have nav, and all the contents. And for all of them, we will give a little margin also, 5 pixel. We are defining the margin 5 pixel for all of this. Right now, important is here header, navigation, main, advertisements, all are there. I want section, means we need to arrange this. I need to change when I go to device like mobile. When I go to device like some tabs, the placement should change. Placement should change. For example, when I'm watching on mobile, after header, the advertisement should come. After header, advertisement should come. After advertisement, nav bar should come. After nav bar, main should come. After that, footer. Right? But when I am watching on desktop, then what should happen? Nav bar should be left side, main should be in center, and aside should be right. That means how you will completely change the position of a row. That means actually ads is present in section 3rd row. We are saying that you have to keep that under header. How you will completely remove it from their position? How you will change the position? See, to arrange this in a perfect way, what is the correct concept is, all these are defined. All these are defined in the body section. They are in the body section. So what we will do? We will write the body section. Okay. In the body section, I want navigation, or we will do one thing. Instead of body section, we will apply all this in a container. Okay. We will keep all of them in a div, and let's keep this div as what? Container. Okay. Now we will access the container. So dot what? Container. Dot container. Now what we need to do is, I need to divide this container into 3 columns. Then what we will do? Display what? Display as grid. How many columns? Grid template columns. Grid template columns. 3 columns I want. Left column shorter, right, center column large, right column shorter. So I will give like 3 fractions, 6 fractions, and 3 fractions. 3 fractions like this. Okay, now you see here, it is divided into columns like this. It is divided into this way. We want to divide this into this way. Now here, what is the place of header? In which row we want the header? We want the header in first row. First row. From which column? First column. First column to how many columns? 3 columns. Total number of columns are how many? 3. So what is the position of header? Position of header is row 1. From column 1 to column 3. Column 3. So we write here like this. We write header. Header. Header, we will use grid row. Grid row. We haven't used this anytime. Grid row. Row number 1. Okay. What about grid column? Grid column. It should start with 1 and end up to 3. For that, 3 means you have to give 4, because the spanning will happen 1 less than. That means if you want to give 3, then you have to give as 4. 1 less than, you have to configure that. So that is header. You can see that. That means it is in the first row, first column. How many it is spreading? It is spreading into 3. It is spreading into 3. Right? That is how we divided it. So that means it is 3 columns. Okay. What about footer? You see the position is not correct for footer, right? So what about section? Section, second one. Section grid row. In which row it should be? Section row should be, so second row. How many? So grid column 1 to how many? 4. Section is in the second row. Section is in the second row. Okay. What about the footer? Footer is in the grid row. Grid row is how much? Third. Grid column 1 to 4. That means it will spread correctly. For section, I will give little bit height. For section, I will give height. For section, I am giving height as some 300 pixel. It will increase the height of the section. Increase the height of the section. Okay. Now you see here, in this section, now main and adds 3 are present here. Now, what is the position of now? What is the position of now? You still not changed. You still not changed. What is the position of now? What you are doing then? You are not listening. Is your mobile okay? Watching your mobile okay? Why you are watching mobile in class? Our admin told you, take your fees back and get out. You go now. One second. Continue, right? Yeah. Now, what is the position of now? Position of now, which row it should be? It should be in section only, na? That means section row is how much? Section row is how much? Second row. Which column? First column. So you know the position of now. What we have to do? So we have to give what? Now. Now. Right? So what is the position? Grid row. Grid row. What is the grid row position? Grid row position is what? Second. Grid row second, na? Section is second row, na? Section is second row. That means now should be in which row? Second row, right? And what should be the column? Grid column. Grid column should be what? First column. Column 1. That is the now position. That is the now position. but still others need to adjust, right? So what is the other one? So what is the other option we are having? So we have main. What is the main position? Grid row. Grid row should be how much? 2. What is it? Grid column. Grid column how much? 2. Second one. Am I right? It should display in the second one. What about the third one? Third one is what? So another option. What is it? We have aside. What is it? Grid row. Grid row is how much? Second only. And grid column is how much? Grid column is third. That's how we define. But here all these three are present in section, right? All these three are present in section. Now you don't need section. Why? Because you are arranging into rows and columns of these. Then you don't need of section. Then you remove the section. The now, aside, and the main contents will automatically arrange. Right? Now what you have to do, you need to adjust the height of any one. Main adjust, we will adjust. That means for main, what we will do? We will put height. For main, we will put 300 pixel height. Then automatically it will fit. Now these are arranged automatically. Now what is the, all these days we haven't learned grid like this. All these days we haven't learned grid like this. The problem with the grid is, we thought that it is only rows, columns only. But what is specialty about grid is, suppose I want advertisements left, navigation right. Then we can simply change the numbers. That means you don't need to cut and paste the code. Generally, if I say that this block I want below header, then people think that we need to cut it from bottom and paste it above. We don't need to do that now. Simply change the numbers. For example, you see now what I will do for aside. Grid column, I will give 1. For now, grid column, I will give 3. You will see now automatically they change it. Advertisement comes left side, nav bar comes right. That means you don't need to cut the positions. You need to keep everything in clean. That means what you can do here simply. So we define, so grid column is what? 1. And here we need to set it to 3. Like this it will do. Why we have to do like this grid? Because to create responsive designs. Websites responsive designs we can create by using this. In interviews, they will ask all this, that how to create responsive pages. What are the options required for creating responsive pages? I will give list, one responsive design we will see. Already we learned one before this grid. What is it? Meta. We learned about meta. What we do? Viewport. Viewport we have to define width according to device width. To design responsive pages, lot of things are required. In that, one is meta. Second one, we learned about image. Image, fluid images. How do we create? By giving image size in %. That means by using meta, by using fluid images, and by using grid. There are so many others also. You remembered already, I told you media query. Media query, I told you. Navbar, horizontal orientation, vertical orientation, navbar we designed, right? Otherwise, I will tell you later, no problem, right? This all comes under response. Here, the point is, observe carefully. If I am watching on mobile, these number of columns should not be there. If I am watching on mobile, portrait. These number of columns should not be there. Everything should be in one column only. Then see what we will do now. We will simply have to design like this. You see now, we are writing like this. So when we are designing, we have to use at the net media. Media indicates 3 targets will be there. Already I told you. Media targets will be print, speech, screen. I told you na, style media types. Style media types I told you. So style have mime types. Style have media types. Media is equal to print. In the style introduction only we learned, na? Right? That means media, if it is screen, media is screen. Media is screen. And in the parenthesis, orientation. Orientation is colon landscape. Orientation is landscape. If media is screen and orientation is landscape, that means we are watching on screen and rotated wide. Then what should happen? You can show multiple columns. It's good, right? Then what you have to do, you have to copy all these into it. Let's copy this one. So container must display what? Grid. And in that 3 columns it has to do. So copy all this part. Means remove all this part. And put it inside this area. Okay. That means this is the effect. If container is, yeah. These all things should happen. If it is which orientation? Landscape orientation. Okay. Now the same things. Now we need to do some changes. Here we don't need section anymore. We remove na. Right. Okay. Now see what we have to do. We have to write one more media query. At the net media. Media is screen and orientation. Orientation is portrait and orientation is portrait. If media is screen and orientation is portrait, then what we will do is display grid only. Okay. Which one to display grid? Container na? Container should be display what? Grid. How many columns? Only 1 column. That means grid template columns. 12 fractions, 1 only. 12 fractions means it will occupy complete screen. Only 1 column will come. Okay. Now we have to write header. What is the place of header? Grid row. Grid row must be 1. There is no columns. Only 1 column will be there. No? You don't need to mention about columns. Okay. What about suppose next one? After header, I want aside. Aside means I want ads. That means what we will do? Aside grid row. Grid row is 2. After that, nav bar should come. After advertisement, nav bar should come. Then we use nav. What is it? Grid row. Grid row is how much? 3. Grid row is 3. After that, main should come. That means we will give main. Grid row is how much? 4. After main, we will have footer. Footer. Grid row is how much? Grid row is 5. That is the orientation. Now this is the screen actually. Now you copy this and go to the Chrome browser, because there we have a mobile simulator, right? So in the Chrome browser, we are having the mobile simulator. And here we will take the mobile simulator, copy and paste. Okay. You take the mobile simulator and select mobile simulator, and you see all will come in one column only. One column, main should adjust the height. Na? For main height, we will give as 300 pixels. Main height will increase a little bit. It will be like this. This is watching on mobile. And you see header after header advertisements will come. Your wish. If you want navbar above, advertisements below main, then you have to change the number. So navbar, I will give position 2. Main, I will give position 3. Aside, I will give position 4. That means aside will be bottom. Understood? And observe carefully, when I rotate my screen, automatically it comes in 3 columns. That means when I rotate again, it will be in single column. That means user should not face any difficulty in scrolling left, right, up and down, and like up and down compulsory, no change. You cannot control scrolling up and down. It's mandatory. But left, right, user should not scroll. That's the reason, according to the device and orientation, the screen should change. Not only screen, contents also should change. Their placement should change. That means when I click on portrait, what should happen? When we say portrait, then everything should be in one column. When I say landscape, then it should be in multiple columns. Then header, footer, everything will be there. I'm not keeping any content. You put some content. I'm just giving boxes. You can put nav bars and all those. You already learned about that. So this is very important in understanding grid. This is the main purpose of grid. We never use it like this. So we used the grid only for arranging into columns. 3 columns, 4 columns, 7 columns, like that. But actual grid purpose is like this. So we can use for the previous, how we used it. And now we know better than that. We know how to change the directions of, means you can change the position. Not only position, you can remove some elements. Suppose when user is watching portrait, I don't want to show ads. Then what we do when it is portrait, what we do is we will keep this aside as display as none. That means now you see advertisements not there. Advertisement is not there. But when you are using landscape, advertisement will come. But when you are using portrait, advertisement will not be there. You can hide it. That means any area you can remove. Generally, we do that. So when we design screens, when they go on to mobile, automatically the change happens in the content. Even you can change background, pictures, colors, effects, everything. Suppose, for example, observe here for the main, what we are doing is, I will do one thing. We have Netflix banner. Na? We want to put the Netflix banner to the main, right? Or to the entire body section. So we will do one more thing here. So Google, we will say here, Netflix banner. This is Netflix banner image. We will take this image. Suppose this image is enough. This image is enough when you are watching portrait. That means what we will do, we will save this in our project folder. This is Netflix portrait P. Where it is? It is in E drive. Our project is in E. Shopping, public, images, in that Netflix P. Already Netflix banner is there, no? Yeah, Netflix P. Portrait this is. Okay, so see what we are doing now. So what we are doing here is we are writing for the, yeah, if it is landscape in the body section, we are defining background image. URL is equal to, it should be public / public images. What is it? Netflix banner. So, and I will give background size as what? Cover. Now here we are defining same copy. When it is portrait in the body, we can put a different image. I will put here, so Netflix. So in images, we have Netflix p.jpg. You see now a different banner will come. Right, for all of them to make it appear, all these containers will have background color as white. Or I will give as RGBA. Just roughly, later you can change, that is 255, 255, 255 and 0.5. That means a transparent will come. That is the portrait we are defining, landscape we are defining. Now see what happens when I go here. So it is a different, background is different now. When I rotate this, its background is different now. That means even background effect is changing for this Netflix banner. That means that is something lengthy image right side. That is the reason we can't adjust that, right? You can set height and width. That means suppose I am giving, it will be cover in a landscape, not in landscape, in a portrait. In portrait, so background size, I will give some 200 pixel. Then it will display like this, 200 pixel. I don't want to repeat, then I will use background repeat as a no repeat. Background position, we will give as center. Now it will go like this. I given only 200, right? That means I will give here the pixel as some 500. That means size will increase like this. When you are rotating, then it changes. It will have a different background. That means you can change a lot of things using media queries, right? That is very important in designing of pages. This is called responsive design. That means they will adjust according to the window screen, right? Always it will not be 3 columns or 2 columns. Earlier, if you design grid, always it is 2 columns, 3 columns. Now they will adjust. If you can design footers also like that. Earlier, when we designed footers, how many columns they were having? 4. Now, when I'm watching on mobile, how I can show 4 columns? On mobile portrait, I can't show 4 columns. That is not good because size will be very less now. Then what we have to do? Those 4 columns we need to again divide into 4 columns vertically. Understood? One below another, not one beside another. That you have to change. This is all done by using media queries. So to design this option, another option is what are media queries? Media queries is a big concept. Later you will learn. As of now, small point I am showing. What are media queries? So media queries are used to configure your page according to following option features, according to following features. What are those features? We have one is media type, which can be screen, which can be print, and which can be speech. We have another one. What is it? Instead of media type, not only media type, we can use orientation. We have two things. What is landscape, and we have portrait. Landscape and portrait. Another one we have, we have min width and we have max width. These you will learn later. That means not only orientation, sometimes we need to change according to width. That means now, for example, when user is watching here on browser, I am adjusting the width. I am adjusting the width of window. You see, it fits like this. It should not fit like this. This is not landscape. Landscape is rotating landscape and portrait. That means it is not adjusting, because don't think that it is portrait now. Portrait is not depending on width. Portrait is depending on orientation of your device screen. This is not portrait actually. Then what happens? Content will shrink. Content will shrink. Content should not shrink. What should happen? It should not shrink. What should happen? It should automatically come to multiple lines. Then not only orientation, we will write width also. We will say that after reaching 500 pixels width, now come to multiple rows. Like that we can adjust depending on orientation, depending on width. That width you will see later when we detailedly learn about media queries, right? As of now, our concept is to understand correctly what is grid. This example I will copy to you. You can try this. I will copy this example here. Okay, that is the example. So we designed a layout which can change according to the device orientation, depending on landscape or what portrait. Now, in many interviews, this question is again asked like, what is difference between columns and grid? Already I explained this, if you remembered. I explained this, what is difference between columns and grid. I told you we can divide ordered list, unordered list into multiple columns as well as grid. What is difference between columns and grid? Grid columns are independent. If you keep any content in a grid column, it will be in that grid column only. But columns are not independent. Columns are continuous. Continuous means if the column height finished, then the rest of the content will go to the next column. That is the difference between grid and columns. I will show you here. See what we are doing now here. Actually, suppose I will show you this difference. Let's say columns, HTML. There is another option, columns. So here, this is a div and we have a class container. In this, we have one div and we have another div. That means this is two columns actually. And here in one column, this is called 2 and this is called 1. Okay. Now what we are doing here is, let's copy some content. let's copy some paragraphs information. Yeah. Okay. Now here we'll push the paragraph there. A paragraph. Okay. Now I am pasting this duplicate. So many paragraphs are there. Lot of paragraphs of information we keep here. Okay. Now what happens is here I will go to style, and in that we have container. Container we are giving display as a grid, and grid template columns, 6 fractions and 6 fractions. Now you see this is the grid here available. This is the grid is. Height actually finished here. Actually, this is height finished, but it is coming continuously only. That means it is not going into second column, right? That means everything is in that column, right? I don't want like that. After it reaches the height, I want it to come to second column. Grid will not allow. So use grids to design independent columns. If you want continuous columns, then you have to use columns. That means you see how we can do. This is container. Now in the container, remove all these. You don't need anything now. Means you don't need all these divs. Just remove everything. Keep everything as paragraphs. Now simple, everything looks like this. Now what you have to do is just you need to remove this and put as what? Columns. Columns, how many? I want 4 columns. That's it. And you can see, and I will keep text align as justify. And you can see it will be arranged into 4 columns like this. Everything will be in 4 columns. That means into 4 columns, the content is divided. That means how it will happen after reaching the bottom, automatically comes to the next column. That means it's like generally you see newspapers. That means this column continues to this. This column continues to this, like this. It will adjust accordingly. It is not like one column only it will display. Grid will display in one column only. For example, suppose here at the top I added some header, and I am saying some The Hindu like this, and here I defined header, and here I mentioned font size as 50 pixel, font weight as bold, and here background color as black, and say color as white. So, and text align as center, and here we will define padding as 20 pixel. Then it will have the content like this. At the top will be there, and all the information will be in continuous. So I will also give margin bottom as 20. It will be little down. Now here important is you can add any number of columns. Just you have to mention grid columns 6. Suppose I said 6, then automatically distribute into 6 columns. Right? You want some gap between the columns, then you have, so we have an option. So we have column gap. Column gap, suppose 20 pixel, it will give some gap between columns. We have column gap. We can also have column can also have rule. Column rule. Rule is nothing but line. We can give as a suppose 2 pixel dotted and black, and you can see there will be a rule line between. Columns can display content in this way. Here you can have any headings, anywhere, any heading. For example, you see here I am writing, suppose here I am defining a heading 3. And here I defined, suppose some say sports update, right? That is sports update. Now I defined something like, so wherever heading 3 is present, background color is gray and color is white. Then it will display in this way, and padding as 5 pixel. It will be in this way. Now you keep such content anywhere. Suppose after 3-4 paragraphs, another heading is there, H3. Suppose some movies like this, and it will give something like this. What is this? Heading 3. Heading 3 I will give, and it will come here in this way. Anywhere you can add any content, right? You can keep your pictures, your content, anything. Suppose I will keep after this 2 paragraphs, that means somewhere it will come here below, right? I will keep after 1 paragraph enough, because a paragraph is having a lot. Then it will display like this. That means we can keep any content anywhere you want. This kind of presentation you cannot do with grid. You have to do with what? Columns. So grid is for independent columns. For continuous columns, you have to use these columns. Usually you see all these newspaper, everything will be in this way. So this is actual the columns. That means what you have to difference is in grid, every column is individual. In grid, every column is individual, right? And in columns, every column is continuous. That means which spans its content to next column, content to next column. Every column is continuous. That means it will span to its content to the next column. Automatically it comes to the next column. That's what actually it can do. This is one example. So first I will give the syntax, what options we can use. For container, what are the options we can do? We can display what? Columns. Columns, how many? So we can give some 4. What else we can give? We can have an column gap. So 20 pixel. We can also give column width. Column width we can give. But if you give gap, automatically width will adjust. You can adjust the width also. You can give column rule. Column rule is 2 pixels, some solid, some black, like this. Column width you can define. These are the options, right? That is how we can define. Here problem is you cannot merge columns. Actually, so here one point is you can merge all columns. You can merge all columns, but cannot merge specific set of columns. For that you have to use table only. You can merge all columns, but you cannot merge any specific. For example, suppose somewhere in the middle here you see this is like newspaper content and all are there. Now somewhere actually in the middle, suppose I want to show some banner. In the middle here, I want to display image, right? I want to display an image. This image I will keep in a div. So class as banner. Okay, here I am defining an image source is equal to, so // public /images So we have Amazon banner. Okay. Amazon banner. So width is 100%. I defined. And height is some 100 pixel. And you see here that will be somewhere here. Right. Then for what we are doing here is this div, whatever the banner is there. So we are accessing banner. So we have banner. We have just banner. Right. That is the class given for that. I want to use the columns. You can see here the columns. You have an option. So columns, we have an option called span. Columns can have a span. Where is it? Column span. Column span, you have all columns merge. But important here, all columns merge means it will merge all the columns. That means here I will keep little bit height for this as height is not enough. That height is some 200 pixel, 300 pixel. It will be in this way. We can split all the columns, but we cannot merge only 2 columns or 3 columns like that. All will come. We cannot give the count here. For example, see here, actually, when you are defining the count, that means column span, how many? Some 2. Here you can see it's not working. It is present here only. Column span, I am giving some 6. Now you can see it's not working. You can define only one option. What is it? All. Then it will merge everything. If I want 2 columns to merge and 3 columns to merge and 4 columns to merge and show, then you have to design a table. By using table only, you can design such grids. But this is how we can work with the columns. Right? Just temporarily, I given so many paragraphs. Roughly, I will add 1-2 paragraphs only. Others you can try later. Okay. This is example. This is example of how we can work with the columns. Right. So we have positions and we have display. In display flex, display grid, and another one columns. In positions, we have Z index and other positions. Right. Now, similarly, others. Backgrounds. So how we can set backgrounds, how we can set font styles, how we can set other type of effects. So those all we will see in next session. Tomorrow we'll do that. Okay. In tomorrow's session, we will learn some text effects, how to give background effects, how to define. Then by using that, we can create some examples now. To create those examples, we need to learn some more points. Then we can design templates, right? Then tomorrow we'll see. Okay. Right.